The screech of tires against wet asphalt shattered the Miami night like glass breaking in a cathedral. Zara Quinn dropped her wrench and rushed to the garage's rain-streaked window, watching a silver Ferrari 488 GTB slide sideways through the intersection below. The driver overcorrected, sending the $250,000 machine spinning into a concrete barrier with a sound that made her wince. She was already moving before the echo faded, grabbing her emergency kit from the workbench, where she'd been rebuilding a Mustang engine. Quinn's auto restoration sat in Miami's forgotten industrial district, far from the gleaming towers where Ferrari owners typically lived their pristine lives. But metal and flesh followed the same laws of physics, regardless of bank account size. Rain hit her face like ice needles as she sprinted across the empty street. Steam rose from the Ferrari's crumpled hood, mixing the acrid smell of burning electronics with the ozone scent of the approaching storm. The driver's door hung at an unnatural angle, and through the spider-webbed windshield, she could see a man slumped forward, dark hair matted with blood. "Don't move!" she called out, dropping beside the wreckage. Glass crunched under her boots as she reached through the twisted doorframe to check his pulse. Strong and steady, but his breathing was shallow. A gash across his forehead leaked blood onto his expensive suit. The man's eyes fluttered open, revealing the most piercing gray she'd ever seen. Even dazed and bleeding, there was something magnetic about him, something that made her pulse quicken, in ways that had nothing to do with the emergency. When he focused on her face, recognition flickered in his gaze. "You," he whispered, his voice rough with pain and something else she couldn't identify. Zara frowned. She'd never seen this man before, but the way he looked at her sent chills down her spine. "You're hurt. Try not to talk. Zara Quinn." He said her name like it carried weight, like it meant something more than the identity she'd carefully constructed. "I've been looking for you," her hand stilled on his wrist. Nobody had called her by her real name in 3 years. These days, she was just Quinn, the mechanic who could make any engine sing and ask no questions about where the cars came from. "I think you have me confused with someone else. We need to get you to a hospital." The man struggled to sit up, wincing as fresh blood trickled down his face. "My name is Marcus Sterling. Does that mean anything to you?" It meant everything. The name hit her like a physical blow, dragging up memories she'd spent 3 years burying. Marcus Sterling, the tech billionaire whose testimony had destroyed her family. The man whose cold corporate efficiency had cost her everything she'd held dear. But this couldn't be him. That Marcus Sterling had been older, silver-haired, with the calculating eyes of a predator. This man was younger, maybe early 30s, with the kind of rugged handsomeness that belonged on magazine covers rather than in boardrooms. "I don't know any Marcus Sterling," she lied, but her voice cracked on the words. He studied her face through the rain and blood, and she saw the moment he caught her tell. A smile ghosted across his lips, sharp and humorless. "My father was Marcus Sterling. I'm Mark, and I know exactly what you did to my family." Detective Rosa Martinez lit another cigarette with shaking hands, staring at the case file that had consumed her life for 3 years. The warehouse district stretched endlessly beyond her unmarked car's windshield, a maze of shadows and secrets, where truth went to die. Her phone buzzed with another encrypted message from Vincent Cross, and she felt the familiar twist of self-loathing in her gut. The Quinn girl is moving. Handle it. Rosa had been walking the razor's edge between law and corruption for so long, she'd forgotten what solid ground felt like. What started as a single favor for Vincent, looking the other way on a minor drug bust, had spiraled into something that kept her awake at night, staring at the ceiling and wondering when she'd become the monster she'd once sworn to fight. The Quinn case was supposed to be simple. Tommy Quinn, small-time car thief turned drug runner, kills a prosecutor in a botched robbery. Open and shut. Rosa had even helped massage some of the evidence, ensuring the timeline worked perfectly. Justice served, case closed, everyone moves on, except Tommy Quinn hadn't killed anyone. Rosa knew because she'd been there the night prosecutor Marcus Sterling died, watching from across the street as Vincent Cross himself put 2 bullets in the man's chest. She'd watched them plant Tommy's fingerprints on the murder weapon. Watched them stage the scene to look like a robbery gone wrong. Her radio crackled to life. "Martinez, we've got a situation at the Sterling crash site. Victims gone missing, along with a local mechanic." Rosa's blood chilled. She'd hoped Mark Sterling would die in that crash, taking his inconvenient questions about his father's death with him. Vincent had been growing increasingly paranoid about the prosecutor's son, especially after Mark had started asking uncomfortable questions about the investigation. She pressed the radio button. "On my way." 20 minutes later, Rosa stood in the rain beside Mark's demolished Ferrari, studying the scene with practiced eyes. No blood trail leading away from the wreck, no signs of struggle. Someone had helped him walk away, someone who knew how to avoid leaving evidence. "Witness saw a woman helping the victim," Officer Chen reported. "Dark hair, medium build, disappeared into the industrial district." Rosa nodded, but her mind was racing. Zara Quinn wasn't just Tommy's sister. She was the one person who might be able to prove Vincent's involvement in the Sterling murder. 3 years ago, Zara had been asking too many questions, hiring private investigators, refusing to accept her brother's guilt. That's when Vincent had decided she needed to disappear permanently. But Vincent was dying now, pancreatic cancer eating him from the inside out. His organization was fracturing as lieutenants positioned themselves for succession. For the first time in years, cracks were showing in his carefully constructed empire. Rosa's phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. I have something you want." Her hands trembled as she stared at the message. Somehow, Zara Quinn had gotten her personal number. Somehow, she knew Rosa was involved. The careful house of cards Rosa had spent 3 years building was starting to collapse. She looked around at her fellow officers, good cops who trusted her, who had no idea she'd been feeding information to a criminal organization. If Vincent discovered she was compromising, he wouldn't just kill her. He'd make sure everyone she cared about suffered first. But if Zara Quinn had evidence that could bring Vincent down, maybe Rosa could finally stop being his puppet. Maybe she could remember what it felt like to be a real cop again. Rosa typed back, "Midnight, Bayfront Park, come alone." As she hit send, she wondered if she was walking into a trap or finally walking toward redemption. In Vincent Cross's world, the two were often the same thing. Part 3. The double game. Dante Cross had inherited his father's dark eyes, but none of his cruelty. Standing in the shadows of Vincent's private office, he watched the old man rage about loose ends and unfinished business, every word confirming what Dante had suspected for months. His father was losing control, and desperate men made dangerous mistakes. "The Quinn girl is becoming a problem," Vincent snarled, pacing behind his mahogany desk like a caged predator. And now Mark Sterling is alive, probably filling her head with ideas about justice and revenge. Dante remained motionless, his face carefully neutral. His father couldn't know that for the past year, Dante had been secretly feeding information to federal investigators, building a case that would finally bring down the Cross crime family. What Vincent also didn't know was that Dante had an ally on the inside, someone Vincent trusted completely. "What about the Sterling girl?" Dante asked casually. "She's been quiet for too long." Vincent's smile was vicious. "Nina Sterling thinks she's so clever, pretending to be broken while gathering intelligence. She has no idea I've been feeding her false information for months." Dante's blood ran cold, but he kept his expression unchanged. Nina Sterling, Mark's brilliant younger sister who'd volunteered to go undercover in Vincent's organization 2 years ago, was walking into a trap. She'd been posing as a traumatized victim, someone Vincent could manipulate and control, while secretly documenting his entire criminal empire. "She's proven useful," Dante said carefully. "Her computer skills have helped us streamline several operations. Her computer skills have helped her copy files she thinks I don't know about." Vincent's laugh was like breaking glass. "Tomorrow night, we're moving her to the warehouse on Pier 47, permanently." Dante felt his carefully constructed world tilting. Nina wasn't just an undercover agent. Over the past 2 years, she'd become something more. Their shared hatred of Vincent, their mutual desire to bring him down, had evolved into something deeper. He was falling in love with a woman whose life depended on maintaining a lie that was about to be exposed. His phone buzzed with an encrypted message. "Emergency extraction needed. Cover blown." And Vincent was still talking, outlining his plans for Nina's disappearance. But Dante was no longer listening. He had maybe 6 hours before Vincent moved against Nina, 6 hours to coordinate a rescue that wouldn't expose his own double identity. "I should check the warehouse security," Dante said, standing. "Make sure everything's ready for tomorrow." Vincent waved dismissively. "Take Martinez with you. She's been useful, but I think it's time we tested her loyalty more thoroughly." The pieces were falling into place now. A deadly chess game where one wrong move would cost lives. Detective Martinez was another of Vincent's assets, but Dante sensed she was growing increasingly uncomfortable with her role. Maybe uncomfortable enough to be turned. As Dante left his father's office, he pulled out a second phone, one Vincent didn't know about. His fingers flew across the keypad, sending messages to the federal task force, to Detective Martinez, and finally to Nina. Plan accelerated. Exit strategy alpha. Trust the cop. He had 6 hours to coordinate the most dangerous gambit of his life, turning Vincent's own assets against him while rescuing the woman he loved from the father who'd taught him that family meant nothing, when power was at stake. Outside, Miami's neon-soaked skyline glittered with false promises. Somewhere in that maze of light and shadow, Nina Sterling was preparing for a fight that would determine whether justice was possible in a world built on corruption and violence. Dante Cross had spent 28 years being his father's son. Tonight he would discover if he had the courage to be his own man. Captain Hayes crushed his 4th cigarette of the hour, staring at the evidence board that covered one entire wall of his office. Red string connected photographs, documents, and witness statements in a web of corruption that reached deeper into Miami PD than he'd ever imagined. At the center of it all was Vincent Cross, the cancer that had been eating away at his department for over a decade. "Captain, we've got a problem." Detective Johnson burst through the door, his face pale with urgency. "Rosa Martinez never checked in from the Bayfront Park meeting. Her GPS tracker went dark an hour ago." Hayes felt his stomach drop. He'd suspected Martinez was dirty for months, but sending her to meet with Zara Quinn had been a calculated risk. One that might have just cost both women their lives. "Get me everything on Martinez's movements in the last 24 hours. Phone records, credit cards, surveillance footage." His secure line rang. The voice on the other end was young, male, and terrified. "Captain Hayes, this is Dante Cross. I need to meet with you immediately. It's about my father, Detective Martinez, and the Sterling case." Hayes had been a cop for 30 years, and he'd learned to trust his instincts about people. Something in Dante Cross's voice told him this wasn't a trap. It was a desperate son, trying to stop his father before more innocent people died. 20 minutes. The old pier behind the fish market. Come alone." Hayes arrived first, his service weapon ready, despite the voice that told him Dante was genuine. The younger Cross emerged from the shadows, his expensive suit incongruous against the rotting dock pilings and rusted shipping containers. But his eyes held a desperation that money couldn't fake. "My father has Nina Sterling," Dante said without preamble. "He's planning to kill her tonight, along with Detective Martinez and..." Anyone else who knows the truth about the prosecutor's murder. Why should I trust you? Dante pulled out a tablet, swiping through photographs and documents. Because I've been building a federal case against him for 2 years. Bank records, murder contracts, bribery ledgers. Everything you need to bring. Down his entire organization. Hayes studied the evidence, his cop's mind cataloging the implications. This wasn't just about Vincent Cross. It was about a network of corruption that included judges, prosecutors, and at least a dozen Miami PD officers. Where's the warehouse? Pier 47, but it's a fortress. 12 armed men, military-grade security, system, and my father's paranoia keeps everyone on high alert. Dante's voice cracked. Nina's been undercover for 2 years, feeding us information. If Vincent realizes she's not really broken, not really under his control. Hayes understood. He'd seen what Vincent Cross did to people who betrayed him. The bodies found weeks later, bearing evidence of prolonged torture. What do you need from me? A clean team, officers you trust completely. We go in hard and fast before my father can execute his prisoners. Dante pulled up building schematics on his tablet. There's a service tunnel that connects to the old subway system. We can get close without triggering the perimeter alarms. Hayes was already reaching for his radio. Johnson, I need Roberts, Chen, and Williams suited up for tactical entry. Full, Gear, and Johnson. Only officers you'd trust with your life. As they coordinated the assault, Hayes felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Maybe they could still save the innocent, expose the corruption, and remind Miami what real police work looked like. But as they prepared to enter Vincent Cross's stronghold, Hayes couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something bigger than a rescue mission. The evidence Dante had showed him suggested a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of city government. Tonight wouldn't just be about saving lives. It would be about determining whether justice was still possible in a system built on lies. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Tommy Quinn is innocent. I have proof. But you need to hurry. Zays looked at Dante, seeing his own determination reflected in the younger man's eyes. Let's go get our people back. Part 5. Justice served cold. The warehouse on Pier 47 squatted against Miami's skyline. Like a monument to corruption, its black windows reflecting the storm clouds gathering overhead. Inside, 5 lives hung in the balance, connected by threads of betrayal, love, and the desperate hope for redemption. Zara Quinn sat bound in the center of Vincent Cross's office, watching the old man pace like a predator savoring his victory. Beside her, Detective Rosa Martinez nursed a split lip, her police badge a mockery on the concrete floor. Across the room, Nina Sterling maintained her facade of broken submission, while her eyes tracked every detail that might provide an escape. Wrote, 3 years I've been cleaning up loose ends, Vincent snarled, his cancer-ravaged face twisted with rage. 3 years of watching, waiting, making sure the truth about Marcus Sterling stayed buried. And now you people want to undo all my careful work? Mark Sterling stepped out of the shadows, his expensive suit rumpled, a gun trained on Vincent's back. But Zara could see the tremor in his hands. He wasn't a killer, despite everything Vincent had taken from him. It's over, Cross, Mark said, his voice steady despite the weapon's weight. The FBI has everything. Bank records, murder contracts, recordings of you ordering my father's death. Your empire is finished. Vincent's laugh was bitter. You think I don't know about your little federal task force? Half the agents you've been feeding information to are on my payroll. He gestured toward the warehouse's main floor, where armed men were taking positions. Justice is expensive, boy, and I've got deeper pockets than the U.S. government. The sound of shattering glass erupted from the building's lower levels. Captain Hayes' voice echoed through the warehouse speakers. Miami PD! Building is surrounded! Release your hostages and surrender! Chaos erupted. Vincent's men opened fire as smoke grenades crashed through windows, filling the warehouse with choking gray clouds. Zara felt someone cutting her bonds. Dante Cross, his face grim with determination. "This way!" he shouted over the gunfire, leading them toward a service corridor. "Nina, are you—" "I'm fine," she gasped, supporting Detective Martinez, who was struggling to stay conscious. "The federal servers, did you transmit everything?" 2 minutes ago, Dante confirmed. "Every file, every recording, every piece of evidence against my father's organization. It's in federal hands now." They reached the service tunnel just as Captain Hayes and his tactical team breached the main floor. Through the smoke and muzzle flashes, Zara could see uniformed officers, clean cops, Hayes had called them, moving with precision and purpose. Vincent Cross appeared in the tunnel entrance, his weapon trained on his own son. "You ungrateful bastard, I gave you everything." "You gave me nightmares," Dante replied, stepping protectively in front of Nina. "You gave me a legacy of blood and corruption, but that ends tonight." Mark Sterling materialized behind Vincent, pressing his gun to the old man's head. "Thomas Quinn. Say his name." "What?" Vincent's surprise was genuine. "The man you framed for my father's murder. Say his name before you die." "Tommy Quinn was nothing," Vincent spat. "A small-time thief who had a sister who loved him enough to spend 3 years searching for the truth." Mark's voice was deadly quiet. "Who had a family that never gave up believing in his innocence." Zara stepped forward, her eyes meeting. Mark's across the tunnel. In his face, she saw not the son of the man who'd destroyed her family, but someone who understood loss, who knew what it meant to fight for justice when the system failed. "Let him go," she said softly. "Let the courts decide his fate. That's what separates us from him." Mark's hand trembled, then slowly lowered the weapon. Vincent Cross collapsed to his knees as federal agents flooded the tunnel, reading him his rights while paramedics tended to the wounded. 6 months later, Zara stood outside Rayford Correctional Institution, watching her brother Tommy walk through the gates as a free man. The federal investigation had exposed corruption throughout Miami's government, leading to dozens of arrests and the complete dismantling of Vincent Cross's organization.